Yeah, can you hear me okay, Alejandro?
Hey, Dr. Shawn, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing just well. I'm doing fine. Great to see you.
Shawn Baker is an orthopedic surgeon, elite record setting athlete, former nuclear weapons launch officer, founder and CEO of the MeatRX, and the face and one of the gurus of the carnivore diet. Man, that sounds like a character from a James Bond movie or something like that. So thank you very much for doing this. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, my pleasure, Alejandro. I'm happy to try to help out in any way I can. And it's thanks for spreading the word. I suppose. I guess this will reach more people than just yourself.
So I would like to ask you, yeah, just to jump right in, which food has all the nutrients we need to function optimally? Is bioavailable everywhere and has the smallest amount of toxins? Of course, if we consider this as good metrics for an ideal diet.
Well, I would, make a strong argument that animal foods are superior nutrition. I mean, I think clearly from a bioavailability and ease of digestion, what compounds are utilized by our body, the animal foods are clearly superior. I think many people will do better on an animal-based diet than other diets. And it depends on who the person is really and what the condition they're treating. And so, I don't know if you want to get into your own particulars, but for people that are struggling with food addiction, which a lot of people do, they have addictions to particularly sweet type things, sugar and that type of thing. It's difficult to overcome, and a carnivore diet can be very effective at helping people overcome those. And that's really the first. But if we look at this in a basis of, what I typically do with clients is I talk to them about the relationship with food, and what kind of problems they have. And many people, if they're struggling with obesity or type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, it's usually related to the food they're eating. And many people do have a sort of an unhealthy relationship with food, and they eat out of boredom, they eat out of stress, they eat because their family makes them eat, they eat out of cultural pressure. They don't necessarily eat for nutrition, which is why we're supposed to eat.
So wouldn't you say there's like an ideal food to eat? I mean, of course, meat has many properties, many good properties, but you wouldn't say that is the best for everybody?
I think if we want to call food superfoods, then I think meat is probably the number one superfood out there. I think it is something you can live on exclusively. I think it's something that if you eat it, to appetite for the most part, you end up with good health. And I think that's becoming more and more clear to more and more people. Is it something that every single person has to do or needs to do? Probably not. But if you're going to say I'm only going to eat this one food, that's what I would pick, clearly.
What do you think was the role of meat in our evolutionary history?
Well, I think it was essential. I think it is why we evolved. I think that, if we look at, if we want to look at human evolution and make an assumption that we share a common relative to other primates, these primates have been on Earth arguably 40 million years, and they've been eating a similar diet that whole time, where it was, plant-based, fruit-based. They might have eaten some bugs here and there, and they couldn't develop any larger of a brain. They still have a small 300 cc brain. The chimpanzee, who's some people say our closest living relative, outside of our own species, has a 300 cc brain. Human beings have a brain that's 4 times that size, and was at one point even larger. And that only occurred after we started to first scavenge meat and then hunt meat and then access fire. But the major brain growth and the major evolutionary steps towards becoming humans had to do with having access to meat and high quality nutrition and nutrient dense food and animal fat, which is what allows us to have that big brain. Our guts, our digestive tract significantly changed compared to other primates because of the more efficient fuel source we have. We're not designed to, eat all of these massive quantities of plant material, like say a gorilla who, might eat 40 to 50 pounds of food a day. Humans don't have to do that. We only have to eat maybe 2 pounds.
So what would you say it's a realistic ancient diet for humans?
Well, I think humans are opportunistic omnivores, but I think we also are facultative carnivores, which means I think we thrive when we have access to meat and lots of meat. And I think that's probably what the strategy was for much of our evolutionary, past. As we learned how to hunt, Homo erectus probably was the one that sort of raised the bar on that, hunting big megafaunal animals like the elephant and the mammoth and mastodon. We probably would have gotten the vast majority of our calories, at least during certain points, from meat, particularly fatty meat. And then we would have probably eaten a few other things, maybe some berries here and there, and things of that nature. Nuts, we have nuts and seeds are particularly toxic. If we don't process them, we now process them. But I mean, early on, we wouldn't have known how to do that. And so, if you eat a lot of these raw nuts and raw seeds, they can be quite toxic to humans. Tubers, which people argue we might have eaten, but the tubers that were available, 1,000,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, had much less starch in them. They had much less nutrition in them, much less calories in them. I don't think leaves would have been something we would have had much interest in, because the leaves in general have no calories, and they don't particularly taste good. They're very bitter and unpleasant to taste. They might have, at some point, somebody probably figured out that, as they learned how to cook and our culinary skills got better, certain seasonings and spices imparted a different flavor to the meat, and they might have liked that. But I mean, in general, I think meat would have been the mainstay of our nutritional strategy, as long as it was available. And then what happened was, as humans expanded, as we got larger and larger in population and more efficient hunting, we just basically killed a lot of our food supply off, through hunting, through changing the environment. Probably climate had some role in that. But as all those large animals died off, and as the human population expanded more and more, then we kind of ran out of food, and we had to change our nutrition strategy. And that's where eventually agriculture came from. And then since the beginning of agriculture, the individual human health has declined significantly.
So talking about bioavailability, I've heard you said before, like, which plant or which fruit is available in every continent, in every weather, in every different situations. Like you wouldn't have any of that. It would be meat, right?
Right. If we want to again continue this evolutionary argument, and we say that human beings maybe arguably started, or Homo sapiens, humans started in Africa, and we expanded across the globe through all types of climates, all types of geographies, all types of different weathers, temperature ranges. You don't find a single plant that you could name if it was essential. And the only way you can plausibly make the leap that we got all the way, we conquered the whole world, is because the food we had available in every single biome is some sort of animal. You can always find an animal. It doesn't matter if it's the Arctic, where you can find seals and polar bears and fish and certain birds, to the tropics. I mean, the animals are always there, and so the animals make it. And that's where we did it. But you couldn't find mangoes or berries or something else that somebody might say is essential. So the essential food, what we know is essential to human beings, and this is not even in dispute. From biochemistry, we have to have amino acids, essential fats, proteins, vitamins and minerals, and those are all in animal foods. There's no phytonutrient requirements in human biochemistry. So what we need to survive is contained within animal foods.
I know you're not the same, or you don't have the same philosophy as Paul Saladino, which is like from nose to tail. Like, what do you think about organs, animal organs? I know they're very rich in vitamins and vitamin D and many other stuff that maybe you can't find in a regular steak.
Well, first of all, vitamins found in organs definitely are in some organs, and some vitamins they're in greater concentration. Doesn't mean there's none in other cuts of meats. All the cells in the body have the same requirements, and so if the requirements are there, then that substance has to be present. And the question is, how much do you need? How much is optimal? Do we listen to what the RDA says, which is based on a carbohydrate grain-eating population? And if those numbers are not accurate, then we have to say, well, what is the right number? And I don't think we really know. I will tell you that with regard to organs, I think it's fine to eat them. There's nothing wrong with eating for most people. There are a few people that, potentially could, maybe eat so much liver that they got into trouble with vitamin A toxicity. But for the most part, when we look at people that do this diet, and I've looked at, now thousands and thousands of them, the vast majority of them, and I've done surveys, I've surveyed 10,000 people doing the diet, only about 15% eat organs on a regular basis. And, 85% eat it very infrequently or never, and they all seem to be doing well. And so I tend to base my beliefs and my recommendations on actual results rather than theoretical concerns. And I think that's one of the things we should really look at, pay attention to results, because the theories are always changing, and results are pretty reliable, I think.
Do you think you could elaborate more on the RDA and how it emerged?
Yeah, the RDA was basically something that developed around World War II when they were trying to figure out how to feed troops, U.S. troops overseas, and what did they need to fight a war, and what were the nutritional requirements. And so some research was done on that. The initial research, and much of the research subsequent to that, was developed looking at populations and seeing kind of what does a normal person in this population eat, and how much do they need to eat to prevent getting a particular disease, whether it's scurvy or beriberi or some other vitamin deficiency syndrome. The problem with that is, when you look at the standard population, they're basing it on, it's a population that's eating a lot of grain in the diet. They're taking in a lot of anti-nutrients, which increase your requirements. We know that carbohydrates increase our requirements for things like magnesium. We know that glucose can compete with vitamin C across several different cellular membranes. We know from animal studies that things like thiamine, for instance, in a low-carb state, thiamine is, you need less thiamine in a low-carb state than you do in a high-carb state to prevent certain diseases. I'll close my door real quick so the dogs don't.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. So we can say then that I don't know if it's the right term, but on a healthy diet or a diet which has a big amount of carbs demands different vitamins for you to process that properly. So in absence of maybe glucose or other carbs, you wouldn't need that vitamins. Is that right?
Well, I think the amounts are going to change. So I think, there's even some concession among, in the RDA right now. Say, for instance, zinc. We know that if we eat over 1,000 milligrams of phytic acid, and phytic acid is something that's found in legumes, beans, many vegetables, and plant materials. If we eat 1,000 milligrams of phytic acid, then our zinc requirement per the RDA now is doubled. If we eat 2,000 milligrams, it triples it. So we are seeing that depending upon what else is in the diet, it changes, what things are absorbed and how much we need to take of that. And so I think that, for instance, if you're eating a high carb diet, you probably need more magnesium than if you're on a low carb diet, because magnesium is a cofactor for many metabolic processes that carbohydrates are involved in, or the processing of carbohydrates requires higher amounts of magnesium. And a lot of people are magnesium deficient. It might just be because they're eating too much carbohydrate, and their magnesium requirements are higher than what they would normally be for maybe a normal human that wasn't eating so many carbohydrates, because we didn't used to always eat quite as much as we do now.
Sure. So more punctually, in a carnivore diet, would you need supplements in the absence of fruits and vegetables?
For most people, generally no. There are some exceptions to that. There are people that have a vitamin deficient state. Maybe people that have had like gastric bypass surgery, where they'll require ongoing supplementation. Some people do better with electrolyte supplementation early on, particularly as we go from say if we're in a high insulin or high carb state where we have a lot more insulin being secreted. Insulin tends to retain sodium and fluid more so than when insulin isn't so high. So when you initially switch over to a low carb or a carnivore diet, your insulin levels will go down generally pretty low. And because of that, you tend to lose a little bit more fluid and electrolytes. So until your body kind of reaches a new homeostasis. And so, but for the most part, I don't see a real need to add any supplements to the majority of the people. And then even still, even if you wanted to supplement, it's probably better to get it from food anyway.
Okay, great. I've got a cousin that it's a pediatrician, and she told me she was like concerned, or maybe the right question is how old enough you need to be to start considering a carnivore diet, because according to her, it's very important the carbs intake for the brain development in kids. But also I've heard you talk about breastfeeding and the properties of the breast milk. I don't know if it has anything to do.
Well, I think a young child has to grow a lot of brain material. This is when a lot of our brain growth is occurring outside of the womb where much of it occurs. But I mean, the first couple of years particularly, and if we look at the constitution of breast milk, it is very high in both calorie, in both fats, and then there also is lactose. So there is some carbohydrate in there. So I do think that for very young children, they need to make sure they get plenty of energy. And so it can be from fats, and I think animal fat is crucial. I think it's very important to have that in the diet. And you can potentially get enough that way. However, if we look at indigenous populations, they typically will breastfeed till about 2.5 years of age. That's typically not practiced today by most women and children. It's usually much shorter. So because you're not providing the breast milk for that 2 years where that critical brain growth is occurring, in addition to maybe some animal fat, you might have to include some source of carbohydrates, whether it's fruit or something else that's tolerated well. If you're going to breastfeed to 2 years, you may need less carbohydrate in the mix. And then as kids get older and as their brain starts to finish its early development, our brain continues to grow till we're about 25. But I mean, certainly the first 2 years and then up to 6 years is when that sort of major brain growth is occurring. So that would be a period of time where I would consider looking at some carbohydrate additions to the diet. Outside of that, once kids get a little older, they can probably go strict carnivore. And again, there are societies out there that these polar populations that don't really have access to much carbohydrate at all, and they develop kids just fine on basically animal-based diets. But it's got to be, you've got to provide enough energy. This is why children, little babies, tend to have a lot more body fat, because they're fueling that brain, and we don't want to be too thin, and then we can't support the growth of the brain, because that's important. So it's important to be able to have enough calories and nutrition early on, and so either way, fat or carbohydrates, but definitely you need some animal fat in there.
So to be clear, you're not telling people eat meat and that's all you need. You are not advocating that.
Well, I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. I mean, I think there's people that can do just meat and do well, and some people actually need to do that. And again, we should make the distinction between adults and children. I mean, there are adults out there that have significant gastrointestinal problems, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, or autoimmune diseases or other diseases where eating a diet that includes plant material doesn't work well for them, and they have problems. And so there's people that have figured out that if they just eat meat, they do fine and their disease goes away and they feel good and their life is better. And I think for those people, it's fine. Does everybody need to do that? Not necessarily. And then some of those people eventually will find that they can add some foods back in. So I think you have to just kind of test it yourself and see how you do and be objective about it.
Back in December of 2017, you told Joe Rogan that you were skeptical about certain aspects of what you were doing. Are you still skeptical?
Well, I mean, I would say I'm skeptical about a lot of things. I think that, one of the things a lot of people will say is, you can eat as much meat as you possibly can and you'll never gain weight. I've not found that to be true for some people. I think some people do gain weight doing it. I think you still have to work within the context of, physical realities that, I think there is an advantage to eating meat with regard to how many calories you can consume. I think you can eat more than you would on another type of diet, but there is an upper limit where eating too much can be a problem. I think there are, the universal applicability of this diet to every single person. I would say that I think maybe it doesn't work for everybody. It's good that we're having some studies done around this diet now, which is pretty exciting for me because, it's hard to make the argument when the real studies haven't been done yet. And, while I certainly have promoted the success that people have had on this, we do need to sort of, more rigorously study it. And I've been promoting that since the beginning. It's just that, getting people to actually do it is hard. And finally it's being done. So yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be skeptical of a lot of things. I've never told anybody this diet will make you, live the longest. I've never told anybody this is the only diet you can do. I've never told anybody that, there's not other ways to do it. But I do think for some people, this is a very good strategy.
Okay, great. Now you have a world record, and you beat it right when you were in the carnivore diet.
Yeah. So world records, I've had a couple different world records in different sports over the years. But I mean, as far as what I've done since becoming on a carnivorous diet, right before I turned 50, I started this carnivore diet, and within about 6 months, I had set 3 world records in rowing. Which is a pretty demanding sport. So on this Concept 2 rowing machine, I broke the 500-meter world record by something like 4 seconds. Which was a huge. It was a huge break. I broke it by a huge margin, which was pretty neat. As a
nice.
And I'd already been at a pretty high level. I'd already had an American record when I was 49, and I improved my time on that significantly as well, just from switching from a more standard diet to a fully meat-based diet. So I saw a significant improvement in athletic performance.
So what about this paradigm? Let's say that. For activities that need a high glycolytic activity, is it said glycolytic?
Yeah, glycolytic is that's what you're talking about. Yeah, so for glycolytic sports, yeah, you need to use glucose. Do you have glucose on a carnivore diet? Yeah, sure you do. Your glycogen stores are likely filled, particularly if you eat enough protein. I think that's not that controversial. Protein can be converted to liver glycogen and muscle glycogen, through gluconeogenesis. I do think that for some sports and some athletes, depending how often you're training, you might lose a little bit of glycogen if you're training multiple times throughout a day. But I mean, to do a performance of highly glycolytic activity, particularly of a certain duration, you're going to be fine on a carnivore diet. And like I said, I broke world records on a very clearly glycolytically demanding activity, without any carbohydrate.
It certainly has done wonders for hundreds of thousands of people, including names like Jordan Peterson, which cured his gum disease, some anxiety issues. He lost weight like 50 pounds. It did also miracles for his daughter Michaela and her autoimmune issues. Other names like Joe Rogan, and it improved its vitiligo, and among many other benefits. What would you say is the main thing in common in the improvement of all these people on the carnivore diet?
If we can look into what some of the thought is on why we're seeing people have success on a carnivore diet, a lot of it has to do with is that our gut permeability is improving. There's some researchers out of Hungary doing some great work on this, and they're looking at gut permeability, and they can literally see
When you eat certain foods, your gut permeability increases to a pathologic state. And when you eat basically a meat-based diet, you don't see much at all. And I think, and there's some interesting stuff I can talk about on that. But when the gut permeability is increased, we also see things like basically all of our membrane permeability increases, including our blood-brain barrier.
So I think that the diet helps to restore that, and I think that helps with autoimmune issues. I'd also see, particularly when it comes to anxiety and mental health issues, well, a number of things. The stability of glucose, because as blood glucose moves up and down quite rapidly on a hydrate diet, when you're not snacking all the time, we see that probably affects the brain physiology. We also see just the higher quality nutrition. You know, the nutrients in meat, whether it's you know, some of the essential fatty acids, the zinc, the iron, the creatine, the carnosine, the carnitine, all these bioactive compounds, which are known to help with mental health. You know, I think you're just getting better nutrition, and I think it's a combination of those things and probably other things as well that are leading to these results. And there's some, you know, there is some research out there that sort of indicates this that's being done, which is you know, kind of helping to confirm some of these hypotheses.
Nice. Well, I can tell you, for me, in 1 month, I know you've said before that at least you need like 60 to 90 days to have a fair assessment. But well, in the period of a month, for me, I lost 10 pounds. And one really surprising outcome was that I developed a tear in this labrum in my shoulder in November last year doing jiu-jitsu. And I didn't expect that, but with the carnivore diet, it improved a lot. Like almost the pain was gone. The bad thing was when I returned to eating regular food, like I always did, it came back. It's been a couple of months now, but I'm doing better. But it really surprised me. Like it improved a lot, man, a lot. And everybody was telling me, no, you need like surgery for that kind of injury and stuff. So for me, it also looked wonder. I'm looking forward to try it again, like maybe for 90 days, and who knows, maybe keep on going. But what I would like to ask you is, I don't have any particular autoimmune issues or severe diseases. I enjoy food. I enjoy different kinds of food that also are known to be good, like blueberries, like, I don't know, maybe peanut butter, like a good Peruvian ceviche. I don't know. That maybe I'm not willing to live right now, but I think that works for me right now. I know you did that before, like when you were younger, you had a regular diet, and you still were an elite athlete. So would you think it's something to do with age, in my case or in your case? Like through the years, we started being deficient in some sectors of our body, and we need to improve our diet quality.
I do think that age impacts our, you know, our capacity to get away with things. You know, I think when you're younger, you can do a diet that's not as, you know, not as good. And you know, it's like having a new car. You can drive it, and you can get a few, you know, scratches and bumps along the way, and it doesn't break down until enough time goes by. And then I think if enough time goes by, you know, you start to accumulate enough damage to where you start to notice, you notice problems. And that's where a lot of people, you know, they disregard their diet while they're young, because it doesn't seem to bother them much. But once you start getting past a certain age, 30, 40, 50, some of us, depends, those things catch up. But, you know, what I would say when I describe a carnivore diet is that a carnivore diet is a diet that focuses on animal products, particularly meat, as the main source of nutrition. And then the plant products are, you know, you dial them down or up as much as you need to get optimal nutrition. So I think if you get the majority of your nutrition from animal products, and you don't eat a bunch of junk, which is the standard American diet, maybe the standard Mexican diet, where it's a little bit of meat and a bunch of, you know, sugary drinks and garbage. If you don't do that, and you just focus on high quality nutrition plus meat, you're probably going to be in a pretty good place.
Sure. Well, would you like to tell people about MeatRX? What is it, and where can find you?
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in pursuing a carnivore diet or a carnivore-like diet or a carnivore, you know, sort of carnivore diet, MeatRX is a huge platform and it's probably the largest resource in the world for success stories, for how to implement the diet, for information, for research about both health and the environment. It has support teams. We have meetings, virtual meetings every single day on all kinds of different topics. We have coaching that's extremely affordable for most people. We have recipes. We have just, discounts on, products that you might utilize as on the diet. We're hooking up with ranchers and meat producers, in the U.S. and even some other places around the world to help people to hook up with those folks that help provide us with food.
Sure, man. I can't thank you enough. I know we're running out of time, so thanks for this opportunity. And where can people find you, like Instagram or Facebook?
Sure. Well, like I said, meatrx.com. Every day I'm in there doing a meeting. So you want to come and talk to me live on camera, we can do that. My social media is Instagram. It's Shawn, SHAWN, Baker, BAKER, 1967. I have a YouTube channel, just Shawn Baker, same spelling, that I put up a video most days. And then Twitter, it's SBakerMD.
Great.
And so I put some of that stuff there. But thank you, Alejandro, for the opportunity. Hopefully things are going well in Mexico and you guys stay safe with the coronavirus quarantine. Hopefully it'll be over soon and we get back to normal life. And hopefully normal life means we get healthier. We take this as a lesson. It's time to take care of our health.
Sure, man. Thanks a lot. Have a good one and stay safe, you too.
Okay. I got to run. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Don't worry.